Hey you guys, this is Mr. Sal. This is just a question that was asked about in class about, I guess, one of the homework problems. But we went ahead and did it, so thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Given these two functions, we're going to find the simplified expression for f of x divided by g of x, and then we'll find excluded values of the domain, the values of x that are excluded from the domain. So the first thing we need to do is write this as f of x divided by g of x, but we're going to write them as expressions. So if we were to write it as a fraction, this is what we'd be looking at, but, well, I mean, we could change this into regular division first. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to do that. You could do the factoring first if you wanted to, but I'm going to change it into full-blown division here. So this is what we have now. Now, I guess before we forget, I'm going to change this into multiplication by reciprocating the divisor here. So this is what we have now. To continue, what I want to do is change this up into their factored forms, just so we can see if anything can be, I guess, canceled out, right? Because now that we have that as multiplication, what I could do is change this into one large fraction like this, where we're just multiplying all these polynomials here. So I'm going to start off by factoring out this top left polynomial 5x squared plus 16x minus 16. And we're going to have to factor this by grouping, since the coefficient of x squared is 5. So I'm going to have to take 5 and multiply it by negative 16, which is negative 80. And I need two factors of negative 80 to add up to that 16x so I can split it up. And it looks like we're going to have 20 and negative 4. If I multiply those two together, I get negative 80. And when I add them, I get positive 16x. So 16x becomes 20x minus 4x. And this is our new expression. We're going to factor this by grouping these two parts. And from the 5x squared plus 20x, I can factor out a 5x. And from the negative 4x plus 16, I apologize, that was minus 16. I can factor out a negative 4, which leaves me with x plus 4 now. And from there we can factor out the x plus 4, which leaves us with the 5x minus 4 in the other set of parentheses. So I'm just going to write that down here as the factored form of that expression. Next, I'm going to move into this 5x squared plus 22x plus 8. And again, we'll have to look at this as factoring by grouping. 5 times 8 is positive 40, and two factors of 40 that add up to 22 would be 20 and 2. So this 22x is going to split up into 20x and then a positive 2x. Now, factoring by grouping, I can factor out from that 5x squared plus 20x a 5x, which leaves me with x plus 4. And from this 2x plus 8, I can factor out just 2, which leaves me with x plus 4. So I can factor out of that the x plus 4, and then I'm left with the 5x plus 2. And that factors out that green set of parentheses, that trinomial there. Next, I'll look at this x squared minus 2x minus 15 and factor that out, but this one will be a little bit easier. We don't need factoring by grouping on this one because the coefficient of x squared is 1. So I need two factors of negative 15 to add up to negative 2. It appears that we're going to be using negative 5 and positive 3. So that splits it up into x minus 5 and also x plus 3. And that one's done. Next up, we're going to look at the 5x squared minus 29x plus 20. And this one we'll have to do factoring by grouping. So I'll do 5 times 20, which is 100. And I need two factors of 100 to add up to negative 29. And I'm going to be using negative 25 and negative 4. So I got negative 25x minus 4x, which would give us that negative 29x. And now we're ready to factor by grouping. So So from 5x squared minus 25x, I can factor out 5x, leaving me with x minus 5. And from this negative 4x plus 20, I can factor out a negative 4, which leaves me with x minus 5. So from there, I can factor out the x minus 5, and that would be multiplied by what's left, 5x minus 4. Now that this is all factored and we have it as multiplication, we can go through this, and we can cancel out anything that becomes a factor of 1. So right away I'm looking at x plus 4, and this x plus 4 factors out as a factor of 1, and also the x minus 5s, but also the 5x minus 4s, right? Those will cancel each other out, which leaves me with the expression x plus 3 all over 5x plus 2. And that would be the divided form of f of x divided by g of x. So the last thing we have is we got to look at the domain and find any values, excluded values of x in the domain. And to do that, we're going to just look at the expression we had right here, right? Now, if we looked at this part here, it used to be that g of x stuff, right? So any values in the numerator or denominator of this one is going to give us undefined values, because g of x altogether was in the denominator, and we can't have zeros in the denominator. And 0 divided by anything is still going to be 0, unless it's divided by 0, which is still undefined. So any of these three, well, 4, I guess, 4 binomials that we have, if we found that any of them equaled 0, then it would give us a false statement or an undefined statement. So what that means is that if I looked at that, right, I got x minus 5, that can't equal 0, so x cannot equal 5. It was the same one in purple, so I'm going to look at the x plus 3 as well. This also can't equal 0. That's this one right here, right? So x cannot equal negative 3. But then we got the 5x minus 4. That also cannot equal 0, because that would give us an undefined statement. And just solving that, then x cannot equal positive 4/5. Now that takes care of g of x, but in f of x, we also cannot have any of its denominator values to be 0 as well. So that means that, I guess I'm looking at these two here, right? X plus 4, that cannot equal 0, so x cannot equal negative 4. But then, and finally, 5x plus 2 also cannot equal 0, and in solving that, we get x cannot equal negative 2/5. So looking at all our answers there, I've got 5 answers that x cannot be as part of the domain, and that these 5 here.